Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and healing from narcissistic relationships. So we're going to talk about something you've all gone through. You know what I'm talking about. You get it right 100 times in the relationship. And then on the 101st time, you don't get it perfectly. Let me start with this. Most of us have been students at one time or another. I want you to imagine taking a class in which you were told that no matter how well you did in the class, even if your first 20 quizzes or tests were perfect scores, and then one day you're having a bad day, you don't do as well, and the teacher says, okay, well then that last test you took, that's your grade for the class. Your one bad day is your one bad grade. And it ruins your performance in the class, even though you did great. You were actually doing great. And then you get a C in a class that everything up till then had been an A. That would feel really awful, wouldn't it? And that right there is sort of the grading curve and the math of a relationship with a narcissistic person. Many of you can think of examples where you put your head down in one of these relationships and you got it right. You said the right thing, you did the right thing, you didn't do the wrong thing, you didn't say the upsetting thing, you complimented them exactly right, you noticed things you were supposed to notice, you validated them, you just got it right for days, for weeks, even months. You may even feel good about the relationship as you keep getting it right. It's as though you have it all under control. You knew how to walk on eggshells and not crunch a single one. But then one day, as always is going to happen in life, in one of these relationships, you did get it wrong. Maybe you didn't compliment something the way they wanted, or you didn't do it quickly enough, or you made an offhanded comment about something and they experienced it as a criticism, or they didn't like your tone of voice, or you weren't available exactly at the time and in the way they wanted. Whatever it wasn't right. And it resulted in some kind of narcissistic injury. And then the rage begins. It may be anger, insults, gaslighting, rage. But the hardest thing of all is that they may say that you always say that, or you never notice something, or you are never available. Your first instinct is going to be what? To defend yourself. And pull out the long list of things that you've done completely correctly, especially in recent months. All the times you got it right. All the times you encouraged them and supported them and showed up. Well, the tricky part is, though, you can't say all the times you didn't say something that would set them off. Because, of course, narcissistic people do not think of themselves as being hypersensitive or thin-skinned. So all those times, because that was even harder, when you had to inhibit and catch yourself, you don't even get to bring that up. But none of this matters. Because if you do defend yourself, then that's going to defy the rule, and it's almost a law, of not going deep. And then you will dig your hole even deeper and having to defend against all the untruths and all the rest of it that you're going to have to face up to. It's not worth it. There's no point. But that moment that you have gotten it right for so long, and then there's that one moment you don't. It's as though none of that other stuff you did and got it just right happened. That can be utterly devastating. And a reminder that you cannot win in these relationships. That nothing you do can ever make a difference. That even if you figure out the workarounds 100 times, you're perfect 100 times, that one time that you're a little off your game because life is life and you don't exactly anticipate their every need, that it becomes an eraser for all the rest of it. This process can result in endless grief in these relationships and can also create even greater rumination, tension, and depletion, because if you cannot or do not get out, you may find that you become even more obsessive and then ultimately more depleted. It's impossible for anyone to get it right every time. In a healthy relationship, there's something called fault tolerance. You can tolerate mistakes, right? That we may not get it just right, and that the healthy attachment we should have with a friend or a partner or a family member means that we can get past it. Well, that's not the case in a narcissistic relationship, which feels like an eternal game of gotcha. The difficult, not just, I know there's not just one, but one of the difficult parts of narcissistic relationships is that your life is like an iceberg, right? For most people who have to remain in these relationships, you're having to engage in hundreds of workarounds, doing things yourself, holding back on saying things, on doing things, on having to give them empathy and validation, and get none of those things for yourself. The relationship is forever asymmetric and imbalanced. But most people out there don't get it, and they just see the top of your iceberg. You may make it seem as though you are getting along, or to the world that you and whoever this person is, you're getting along, or that the relationship is moving along smoothly. So when you make that one mistake, they have no idea the amount of control and sacrifice that went into getting the prior 100 just right. Again, there is a unique kind of grief to having lived in this eternal gotcha. Everything gets erased if you did one thing wrong mess of these relationships. And what is even more tricky is that as you go through day after day, giving up on yourself, becoming what they need you to be, it seems like it is working better each day. So there's that day you may start feeling comfortable. You may not be so much on your guard and monitoring single thing you say. And that day, you actually may relax. Exhale a little. Say, okay, I can just be myself in this relationship. That's often the day that so-called mistake happens on. Some folks, sadly, will often feel a sense of regret when they get it wrong on that 101st time. Oh, if I'd only been more on it, if I only hadn't said this or that, if I got it more right, or if I didn't do that, then I wouldn't be in this mess. And the self-blame begins, right? Listen, any day you are able to succeed at the mind-reading nightmare that is a narcissistic relationship, that's the miracle. But that regret can keep you up at night and fuel the rumination. If you live like this long enough, you recognize that you have become nothing more than an emotional handmaid to the narcissistic person, living forever and trying to anticipate their needs, avoid their wrath, win them over, and keep the peace. It is not possible to get it right every time. And in some ways, knowing that the first time you get it wrong means that they have that memory eraser for all that you got right, perhaps that could just mean that you stop being perfect for them, trying to be perfect at least, that you don't play their grandiose ground game. You don't get into the mud with them, and don't expect that they will acknowledge you, but stop thinking that you can win at this game. You cannot manage this idea of one wrong move and it's over. This whole psychological series of booby traps, and the first time you trip the wire, the whole thing blows up. That's not a relationship. I have no doubt that this has happened to so many of you. Maybe the key in any of these relationships is to pull back and stop trying to make it work. Making it work isn't a thing in a narcissistic relationship because it really doesn't work. You are merely biding time until the one day you make that one mistake, if you do try to make it work. Making it work then means fully subjugating yourself and finding out that still may not be enough. Let this be that wake-up call that, again, you get in there, you do what you can, you recognize it's going to be a bumpy ride, but at least you don't kind of get into that game. I think of it as one of those games you see that with each successive thing you get right, the prize you get is going to get bigger, right? So the tension mounts. After question 15, you can make so much money, or move 10 or something like that. That the longer you're in the game, the fewer people are in it. So the stakes get higher. That's what these relationships are. With each thing you get right, those stakes get higher. Because it does mean that when you do get it wrong, as it were, there's so much to lose. All that time served, all that seeming goodwill. But if you give yourself permission to recognize this thing's going to topple no matter what I do, you might as well get ahead of it and topple it right out the gate. Good luck with that, and thanks again.